Blurring the line between what makes a film a narrative film and what makes it a documentary is not a new thing. Flaherty, John Marshall, and John Rush have used narrative techniques in documentaries to achieve dramatic effects. And many directors have also adopted documentary techniques in narrative films. Chloé Zhao is one of them. But describing what Chloé Zhao does as just blurring the line between narrative films and documentaries would be such an understatement because the way she implements documentary techniques in her films is uniquely fascinating. And this is an attempt at truly understanding how she does it.
Because if we're only doing superficial level, it's not true representation.
What do you mean by superficial?
Well, you just have, for example, I remember my first film, Songs, I was sort of asked, I understand where they're coming from, but I was challenged of why I haven't addressed this whole list of issues that an indigenous community faces. I said, well, because it's a film about a teenager trying to figure out where they belong. And I like to treat them like that. First and foremost, a human being, not an issue, that needs to be examined. And I myself would like to be treated that way.
All fictions are lies. That's the prevalent thought among fictional writers. But the same writers will tell you that just because a fiction is a lie doesn't mean there aren't certain truths in it. The truth could be something about an ethnic group fictionalized in the story. It could be about human values. It could be something obscure and insignificant that the character does in the story. The truth could be anything you find to be true. But also, not all fictions are the same. There's a difference between One Battle After Another and Matter Supreme. One is a film adapted from a postmodern novel, and the other is a film that fictionalizes the life of a tennis legend. But despite the fact that both films are narrative films, we don't expect the same truth from them. Matter Supreme fictionalizes the life of someone who existed. It has to reflect certain truths about that person. It's an obligation.
9.5?
Yeah, you're a lucky lady.
Oh, I'm excited.
Last pair. You can see those beautiful feet.
On the other hand, One Battle After Another is not obligated to any truth. Whatever truth we get, we get. But there are certain filmmakers who see truth as an element that is necessary, regardless of whether they are obligated to it or not. Chloé Zhao is one of them. She deeply understands the importance of representation when telling a story about something that truly exists or existed. She understands what representation is and what it is not. And most importantly, she understands that a film can be truly representative without losing the cinematic elements that make it enjoyable.
And I ran home. Mom, I can tie my shoes. It smelled like beer, and she just looked at me and said, oh.
In Chloé Zhao's first feature film, she wanted to create a typical narrative film with the three-act structure, a plot-driven story, basically a quintessential Hollywood film. But it didn't feel real, and she got trapped at some point during the writing. Luckily, a producer who wanted to fund the film backed out, and that changed the film's trajectory, and extensively her own trajectory. Instead, she decided to create a story about what she was seeing and feeling, a story based on reality.
Once I immersed myself in that place with these people, it was very hard to find anyone who, with the very little bit of money we had, is able to go out there and spend that much time and to feel like they could just be part of that world. And I had mentors in film school say, well, if you can't afford someone that can go through the process to do that, then might as well just get the real thing.
Songs My Brothers Taught Me explores the somewhat contrasting lives of two Native American siblings living on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. John Winters is just finishing high school, and despite having lived on the reservation all his life, he's struggling to picture a future there. On the other hand, his younger sister Jishan has a more optimistic perception of the community, and her relationship with it is positive. But this film does much more than just exploring dynamics between a brother and a sister. In just 98 minutes, it somehow manages to also tell the story of the reservation. It paints a picture of the social, ecological, and economic reality of the Pine Ridge people without neglecting the historic context that created that reality.
So you guys have been in high school for 4 years. And all of you need to be thinking about what you're going to do.
This scene is a great example of how Chloé Zhao managed to tell us so much in just 98 minutes. On the surface, it's just a group of high school students being asked what they want to become. But at the same time, the scene is showing us important characteristics of the community in a way that prompts us to ask certain questions like, why are the characters so monotonous? Why are they casually fiddling with snakes? Why did the scene start with a shot that spotlights the name of the school? And why is that name so intriguing?
DJ,
Same. Riding bulls.
anybody out here not a bull rider?
What makes this scene a typicality of Chloé Zhao's filmmaking approach is how it manages to create meaning without focusing on any particular thing. I mean, it does focus on people, specifically the character it is following. This scene is still about John Winters, but it also conveys depth about the societal context, which is a distinct thing, but at the same time, inseparable from the character. The scene starts and finishes without concerning itself with exploring any particular issue beyond its characters. Instead, it shows several things that may initially seem unconnected, like the school name, the classroom interaction, the snake fiddling. This symbolic and lyrical approach is what Chloé Zhao adopts throughout the film. Repeatedly, we see shots that are focused on showing so many details about the setting. We see the same idea depicted in multiple scenes. We see visual contrast between two realities. We get a sense of what the scene is communicating with barely any dialogue. Chloé Zhao does this in a way that might initially feel like she's leading the film with visuals. But ultimately, these scattered bits of symbolism, ideas, and shots always end up having a cohesive meaning with percolation effects. The depth in this film lies in the cohesiveness of how every bit is represented. Every context we get in each scene is only as relevant and important to the journey of the character that the scene is about. But then, as the character's journey continues, this context builds up and broadens, and as a result, our understanding of the character's environment also broadens. At the beginning of the film, I thought the reason he wanted to leave was because his girlfriend was leaving, and also because he feels constrained by the community.
Kind of worried about Jishan and Mom. I don't know what they're gonna think.
You don't even worry about it, just go. Just get off this res.
But at the end of the film, I understood that the reason he wanted to leave was his realization of the cause and effect between his own act and the impact it has on his community. He lives in a very poor community where 85% of the families are affected by alcohol addiction. Alcohol is prohibited, yet the only way he can manage to keep his family's head above water is to sell alcohol within the community. That gradual realization and the guilt that comes with it is at the core what's driving John Winter's intention to leave the community. The way Chloé Zhao fully focuses on the human aspect of her story and only shows us the issues when they provide context that are relevant to the character's journey at that point is what really makes her film unique. This after I saw something my brothers taught me. I was also thinking about the poetry of its visuals, the patterns that form from its lettering, and the layers of the story. But how does she get to the point where she's able to tell a story that way?
You know, that feeling of it's not my mother tongue. How has that experience shaped the way that you make film?
I think it made me listen more.
Frances McDormand once called Chloé Zhao a journalist, which is an excellent way to describe her based on how she approaches a story. She absorbs the story that she wants to tell in the same way that an investigative journalist would try to be part of the thing that they want to report on, just so they can have an insight that transcends curiosity. Chloé Zhao's first two films took place in the same location, Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Before she made her first film, she would often visit the reservation and live there for a while.
The elder said to me on my first trip, it's like, if you come and go very quickly, like most news people, then if you come and you actually stay for a while, then we'll start taking you seriously.
So how long was it for a while?
Well, it's not enough. Last year was about, the year of production was 8 months, and the year before 6 months, and the year before was 4 months. So I was working up to...
It's really a lot of time.
It was a big
Such level of dedication and openness to absorb a story is why she's able to create films like Something My Brothers Taught Me. For her second film, The Rider, she went back to the reservation and repeated the same process. Despite the film sharing the same location as her first film, it tells a completely different story. In fact, I think The Rider is kind of an antithesis of something my brothers taught me. Because while the latter is about a teenager wanting to leave the reservation, the former is about a man so immersed in the rodeo life of the reservation that even brain damage couldn't take him out of it. Chloé Zhao uses similar documentary techniques that she used in her first film, like casting non-actors who actually live in the community and filming real scenes that happen in real time, and then finding a way to adapt those scenes into the narrative.
Nobody's ever been on his back. Nobody's touched him.
This scene was a real scene filmed in real time, and it's just a scene where the main actor, Brady, was casually doing something that he was really good at. Watching him do things like this was what convinced Chloé Zhao that she could make a film centered around this character.
Step forward. Step forward. Step forward.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Look at that.
Oh.
Even though some of the documentary techniques in these films were also present in Songs My Brothers Taught Me, it was more distinguishable in this film, and it was due to Chloé Zhao really leaning into reality. One aspect of the film that reflects this was the character Lane Scott, who was cast as a rodeo youngster that became disabled in a car accident. Thing is, that is also what the character is in real life.
Don't want to get a burn, sunburn.
This scene is one of the most endearing scenes I've seen in any film. First, because of the reactions. Brady's reaction and the staff's reaction, which you can see through the mirror's reflection, feel more genuine and more spontaneous the more I watch it. And that's because this is who Lane Scott really is. And his on-screen dynamics with Brady is also his real-life dynamics with Brady because they are friends. This manner of adopting documentary techniques in narrative storytelling and the outcome Chloé Zhao is able to glean from it is something I've rarely seen in Hollywood. Even after gaining popularity, having access to professional actors, and having to film in a rush because of conflicting timelines, Chloé Zhao films still had the same underlying approach. The only difference was, they got better.
I don't see your reservation.
I'm on the Amazon Camper Force list. Try MCD.
There it is.
Yeah.
Chloé Zhao's films are character-driven. She relies on human emotions, internal conflicts, relationship dynamics, and natural stakes to drive her stories. To make films like this meaningful and cinematic without underselling or overselling the effects is incredibly difficult. When you undersell, it feels like the story just passes by. When I watch films that undersell, my reaction is, I see that, but what's that? But there's also overselling. When you oversell, you lose the elegance that tends to distinguish character-driven stories. So, there's a sweet spot, and that sweet spot is non-verbal resonance. You see, Chloé Zhao's experience has shaped her films a lot. She has spoken about how she felt lonely as a teenager, like she didn't belong. And she has moved around a lot just to be able to find out one place that feels relatable. And you can see those experiences in her films. In Songs My Brothers Taught Me, it was a teenager who is trying to feel like she belongs in her community and is scared of being left alone by her brother. In Nomadland, it was a woman who has felt detached for most of her life and then picks up a new lifestyle, hoping to find a community. But the one experience that has actually shaped our films a lot is this.
Let's say I go to someone's home for a holiday, because I was an exchange student. So, and I sit there, I have a meal, and then people are talking and I didn't understand what they're saying. And it takes a long time for me to express myself. So I started to look for nonverbal cues. And I think that is why my films don't have a lot of dialogue, because I find that to be more universal. Language is beautiful, but sometimes it separates us because we don't understand it. But a smile is a smile, a touch is a touch.
I haven't watched many films that are driven by human emotions as Hamnet is. Hamnet is a cesspool of emotions. Like, I felt different waves of emotions in just 2 hours. And that's because of how much the film resonates.
That was a good story.
Chloé Zhao knows how to sell effects in a way that's just enough for you to get a sense of what that scene does and its impact on the story. Of course, these are world-class actors, so you can't take anything away from their ability. But this is something that's always been present, even when Chloé Zhao was using non-professionals in her films. In songs my brothers taught me, there are many scenes where the expression was also the impact of that scene, and made it go, I know what that is. That was not a professional actor, and I think that was perfect. Of course, again, talent always be important, but Chloé Zhao knows how to steer a good non-verbal acting, and most importantly, she knows how to frame it. Like, this particular scene was filmed using subjective perspective, and everything we saw was everything he saw. His expression when he opened the door, and then his eye movement from the child to the mother, and then his expression again. I could feel exactly what he was feeling there, and that was simply because I experienced that scene so in. The importance of knowing what perspective to film a scene from can't be understated. But sometimes, it's not even the perspective that is selling it, it's the visual construct, like in this scene in Hamlet. That is another scene that would make you go, I know what that is. The hysterical laugh, followed by the sigh, is excellent non-verbal acting. But also, throughout Chloé Zhao's films, she has shown that she knows how to frame shots in ways that help her achieve this resonance. She understands when the camera needs to be close and when it needs to be distant. She understands what angles she needs to film a particular shot from. That was how we were able to follow a nomad around for over an hour and a half without losing interest. It is the lyricalness of it, use of non-verbal expressions, cinematography, perspective, camera movement, editing, and sound to tell a story. My favorite scene in Nomadland, there wasn't even any character on screen. If you are still watching this video and you haven't subscribed, then I don't know what to tell you. You're meant to be a subscriber. We are made for each other, so just hit the subscribe button. Yeah, more like it.